couldn't really sleep last night, so doing this pretty early, so I'm gonna try to attempt to sleep after this one. Again, um, sorry if the lighting. I'm not really wanting to turn lights on. So Amnesia, both Rebirth and um, the Bunker will be getting their summary right here. I was gonna do the Bunker next week, but now that I've got my research done, it really doesn't seem like the Bunker should have its own video. It's more or less just adding on to it. Um, so previously in Amnesia, basically in Dark Descent, you had Daniel. He went to Algeria with not Alexander. Um, it was an expedition by a professor, Professor Herbert. They discovered the orb. When they removed the orb from the tomb or whatever they got it from, um, it released basically a curse upon them. A lot of people are calling there it's like a Mithranian or whatever. It's basically another culture's like god. Um, it released basically a shadow and a flesh like monster after him, and basically he went to try to get help the best he can, but every time someone went to help him, it would they would die because the shadow was in their path. Eventually, he was brought to Brennenburg, the place of the game, where Alexander would try to do. Basically, he taught Daniel to make a substance known as Vitae, which is basically this world, maybe the very reason why this exists. Five Nights at Freddy's remnant from their book series, where basically a negative emotion, especially torture, anguish, and all that, becomes a liquid when extracted from a human being. Um, and basically, Vitae, it can imbue a person with abilities and along like it can push back the shadow, but also can extend one's life. Also heal them and all that. It has great properties in it, um, and we learned that Alexander is from another dimension, known as the Other World, um, and is a part of a species that a lot of people call the Gatekeeper, or the Gate Makers, I think it is. We learn in Rebirth who these people are more. But, anyways, he wants to return back to the other world to rejoin with his love, but, well, basically the shadow is hunting him because he's using the orb, um, which, the shadow's coming after him. Based on the ending, it's either, you let him go, Daniel dies, everyone dies, or there's someone he does wrong. I'm trying to remember his name. There was one more orb before Daniel's orb that got shattered and displaced. He basically got tortured, and you get to take his head, and if you threw his head into the process of Alexander going to the other world, basically he would let the shadow come. It would kill the two, but he would. I think he would be someone who was a part of that religion, and he asked for Daniel's release, or you would disrupt the thing for revenge, making the shadow go and take Alexander, and it would allow Daniel to walk away. Now, the Justine DLC is basically just a psychopath doing experiments on people, and who can do this psychological experiments because her father was a doctor who would work on the mental side of things, and basically she wanted to play games with that mentality. The only thing that really mattered in Justine was that her father was someone that was contacted for the expedition for Daniel and Herbert to go to Algeria. That's the only connection that it has to Dark Descent. Um, 50 years later from my shirt's weird. 50 years from Dark Descent, we go to Machine for Pigs. Now we got Mandus, which is the great nephew of Daniel. Basically, he went to Aztec, Mexico, or an Aztec temple. Finds an orb. The orb reveals to him a future where his kids would go to World War One and die in a battle, which kind of goes into the bunker, um, and to spare them from the fate, he kills his sons. His sons were twins that were born out of his late wife during pregnancy. She died, and after this, uh, the fact that he had to kill his boys because of war was approaching. He decided to make his own war against humanity. Basically, anyone that he seen wrong would be fed into this machine to kind of asphyxiate it, and eventually there would be a separate personality made that. So Mantis' soul was attached to this machine. That soul made a whole personality and took on his hatred. While Mandus himself was eventually able to recognize the wrongdoing. And while everything was happening, they made the pig people, which is basically something we'll also explore in the Rebirth. But eventually Mandus gets amnesia from a sickness he got from traveling to Mexico or wherever it was to get to that temple. He got a sickness from there. He got amnesia off of it. Came back to the machine to try to get his kids back. But his mixed personality, which I believe is which is also hinted that there's like a professor or another part of it's like a hunting association that he was a part of like these bigger money people. They send someone to check on him, and he backstabs that person. His voice becomes the spirit or machine's voice. And it basically makes him start the machine, finish the process, make the pig people revolt against the people of London. And that's kind of what it means. It is the end for that story. Getting into actual Rebirth and the bunker. So Rebirth is mostly to explain the other world where Alexander came from, Vitae, the orbs, what the orbs were originally used for. So Rebirth is the main character, Tazi. Basically, this takes place right before World War II. Tazi, she's a French person, or the other ones were British. These are French. These next two I think are French. And Tazi, she is her and her husband are like expedition people. They have a kid. That kid gets an illness, dies eventually to that illness, and she gets pregnant again. And as soon as the news happens, they get invited to this expedition that starts Rebirth. They go down. They get attacked. And from that, they get approached by a spirit who's actually the empress of the other world, but we'll get to that in a second. Basically, she makes a deal for the baby of Tazi. to save everyone, but thanks to a crash, some people die, some people are injured because she decided not to take the deal. She still heals them, but it makes instead of making healing them, it's more to make them followers of the other world to kind of be like task managers and attack anyone. Um, so basically, backstabbed him. I think it would have happened no matter what. Um, it makes them ghouls, which we'll also get into here in a second. But through the ghoul transformation, Tazzy gets amnesia, and through her adventure, she goes through what is known as rips in reality that goes into the other world, and she hits this bracelet that's kind of like a compass to kind of get to and find these ripples and activate them. Um, she finds the Herbert who from Daniel's expedition. He was able to learn about the compass thing and the orbs. He doesn't get a hold of an orb, and he gets a hold of an orb. He uses it to get away from the shadow and get into this other world, but he gets left there and dies to starvation and dehydration. Um, every time Tazzy jumps back and forth, she gets her pregnancy gets speeds up by a few weeks, months, and eventually it makes her due. Um, we see this factory, which, based on the machine for pigs, it looks like Mandis kind of had an epitome, which I'll get to here in a second. There's a lot. I'll get to your second. Anyway, she's able to make it through this world, come back, and basically there's a bunch of deals that are being made without her agreement, and it's basically that the doctor of the group that seems to be the only one left sane takes her baby to try to offer it to the Empress by force, but basically the Empress is wanting Tazzy's confirmation before she becomes a full ghoul. And basically the endings are, you leave the child to the Empress, she becomes a ghoul. There's another one where you get caught, turned into a ghoul forcibly, get your baby taken anyways. There's one where Tazzy leaves with the baby to the real world, back to France, and she's still affected with the ghoul virus, so there's a high chance she can do stuff. But because of the time, I think she would have been put down before it would have wreaked havoc. And then the fourth ending would be kind of like a secret ending. Is those the people who made the factories? They eventually had saboteurs that were trying to use the flesh that the shadow makes to infect the Vitae that runs through the factory that's in that world, and it ends up destroying their world. That's irreversible, and they wanted to finish up the process by just doing a few more. And Tazzy finishes the process, which makes the shadow be able to completely infect the world, kill the Empress, but in the way it also kills Tazzy and the baby. But it means the factory's completely shut down. The other world can't affect the other people anymore. But going into the actual story of the other world, basically there is 7 leaders, just like a normal family through the generations, and the Empress is the 7th. After her mother, the 6th, ends up dying, she takes the throne. She wants to have a baby. She can't because there's a sickness that makes her barren. She uses Vitae, which she starts making she builds have her people build a factory to take people from the like the real world to use to make her live long so that she can rule forever. Um, and basically she, because of that, can't ever recover, so she's waiting. She wants to have a baby. It's still her goal, so that's the whole reason why she lures Taz in. And then it's revealed that there's a liquid that she gives Tazzy and her group that actually changes them to ghouls, which is actually I think, what are they called again? I think they're gatherers is what they're called. Um, and the gatherers are basically people who just go, that were turned ghouls that go get people for the factory. Um, and then the orbs are basically just power sources. Um, and then with Vitae, it kind of balances out and avoids the shadow from interacting with them. Anyways, we also learned a few extra things from previous games. We learned that Alexander was kind of it was Alexander or something like that. It was from a note where basically he he was already in trouble with their legal system, and he introduced a amnesia drug that would allow them to constantly reuse a subject, and every single time that subject was done with his torture, they had used the chemical the drug to make sure they would forget, so that they can re-torture them like it's the first time ever, so that the Vitae can continue to flow, and it would be like endless subjects, which I think we do see in like little pods that basically these people live on this, and they're constantly in torture. But anyways, Alexander, thinking that this drug can clear him of his conscience, they allow him back into a city, but the legal catches up him, and he becomes forbidden. They basically push him out into the real world for Dark Descent to happen. And then we also kind of, I've not been able to find this on the internet, but when I was playing, I found 3 letters that mention that they describe people, and it really sounds like not Alexander, Daniel, Mandus, and I couldn't figure out who the third one was, but it looks like they when Daniel and Mandus had their orb moments, that they were taken to the other world momentarily to be a part of the Vitae factory. And it's very I think one of them is like straight up, it really sounds like Mandus, which would explain that Mandus was brought to the other world, saw the factory, built the factory with the machine for pigs, and then let's see what else. So that explains the connections. Would I explain more of machine pit for pigs? But after that, we get into the bunker, which, here's the reason why. The bunker does not have a lot of a story itself. During my end of my gameplay, we still got a few weeks or so before we finish that up on YouTube. I already got done streaming it. You can go see the final parts of this of that. I think the last few streams are up there, so you guys can go catch up if you want to go on my Twitch. It's in the link in the description. But Bolt will have that in video formats here in the next few weeks. But the bunker is basically World War I happens, which I think Mandus was getting shown a future of the bunker. I think he got shown a future with his kids dying to the bunker situation. so that's why he killed him to avoid a fate that happens in the bunker, which is pretty gruesome. So basically, World War One happens. I believe that is World War Two because there's like huge German stuff happening. But we're played as a Frenchman. Basically, they set up a bunker, and in this bunker there is a Roman tunnels, which turns out to also be actually made from Latin, and it looks like a lot of these people decode it, and it turns out it's just like a religious Bamble, which if you look around, there's orb representation all over the place, which is kind of just like an early shown of what Daniel was mentioning in the Dark Descent, where it's just actually Daniel and Mandus mention this, but big figures have gotten a hold of these orbs throughout centuries and history, and you know it being a big part of the power sources for back then, which explains like the Egyptian pyramids in their universe. But anyways, um, the bunker is basically just World War One happens. We're a Frenchman. We're dealing with more orb interference, and it's revealed through like little bits and pieces that I kind of noticed in the game. Like I noticed that there's like in Rebirth, there's like the floating stones to show that there's a ripple. There's a rip of the fabric there, and this is happening before Rebirth. So the factory is still going on no matter what ending you have. So this is before Rebirth. So the factory is still going on, and that means the other world is still standing in its state. And it's shown that Vitae and the liquid that changes people to ghouls is coming out of these ripples, and people get a hold of that, and I think this is like an infected Vitae because in the very beginning of the game, you're playing as, I think it's Clement is his name, and his best friend Lambert. They get gassed, they get the mask. Then eventually there's a patrol. Clement plays a little trick to force Lambert to do the patrol, which ends up getting him in trouble. He goes being a friend because he's like, I shouldn't be here having fun with the guys. I need to go get them. Finds them in a crater, pretty bad, and because he was parched, he gave him water from a water source, which turns out to be this like very infectious Vitae, and we think he dies by an explosion, but it just knocks out Clement, puts him into a coma state. He's able to recover enough to bring Clement to the bunker, and while he feels amazing at first, he starts noticing like amnesia points. He starts losing himself to the ghoul transformation, and he becomes the monster. I call him the Rat King, but what is it called? The Stalker. We get the Stalker. Lambert is the Stalker. And as he starts transforming, he starts killing, like ripping into people. Because the shadow is existent here, they start losing sanity, which explains the nightmares, explains like the noises and thoughts. We see the shadows of like Rebirth, gold all over the place in the Roman tunnels, and it's kind of not really like stuck there. It's kind of just like, so World War One happens, bunker happens. They're connected to some stuff that was left over from history for the orbs, and of course, if orbs are around, the shadows around. That starts infecting the soldiers, and because there's ripples from Rebirth, that allows Vitae, or the fluid that is similar to Vitae that makes people, feel great. At first, it turns them into ghouls come out. Lambert drinks some of it. He becomes a ghoul, a mutated ghoul. But he goes ripping apart these soldiers. Um, some of the higher ups get scared, blow the hole so they can try to keep it in, but leaving a lot of the lower soldiers behind, sealing them most of their fate. It looks like some get out though, through some tunnels at the very end of the game, um, and sadly, it looks like Clement doesn't get to escape the German army. Um, but yeah, it's kind of just like normal World War I stuff happening, and then like little hints of like stuff before Rebirth is affecting this area. It's not Algeria, um, like what started Daniel's venture and what is the Rebirth. This is actually set in, I forgot what it is, but it's one of the battles that was actually mentioned by Mandus is why he took his kids. Um, so yeah, it's just Rebirth is to explain the other world that Alexander was trying to get to, explaining the orbs and what they are, explaining what the Vitae and all that was for, and why it was made mostly. So it's just like there's a whole setup and explanation for the base of this universe. While the first two games were the aftermath of what started in the other world. So basically, Rebirth is explaining the start of the other world and what happened there, while Dark Descent and Machine for Pigs are the byproduct, are actually like side stories, the small little byproducts that happened along the way, and the bunker is basically like access. It's like what is it called? It's like access stuff. Like after you make something, there's always left over. Like there's always fat skimming at the top of a soup. It's like little bits that get out, and that starts the situation for the bunker, and then just the Rebirth. Tazzy's story is kind of more or less to kind of like either like make or break continuing the universe or like finishing up what makes this universe different. Because it really looks like if Tazzy shuts down the factory, um, like mostly the factory seems to be like taking people that would not be missed. So little connection. Um, that's what I said. In the notes that I found that in Rebirth that connect Mandus and Daniel, it says that Daniel has no very close relatives and he should be fine to be taken. While Mandus, he lost his wife and kids. He's perfect to be taken. Um, that's basically what made me think Mandus and Daniel were mentioned in Rebirth. Um, but yeah, it's just like the big story is the other world and what happened there, and all these other people's stories are kind of just like it's only connected by so little of what is actually the main story, and like Tazzy, sadly to my thing is the biggest effector of this. Is just like Daniel, all he did was possibly stop the continuation of one of the effects, and the possible Alexander does not get to the other dimension because we don't get to see him. So I think no matter what, he is taken by the the flesh and the shadow, no matter what. So him getting away and Daniel dying is not the true ending. Um, but it's just like, all it does is stop a little bit from happening. Mandus, he stops his own stuff from happening. Um, and the bunker, it's kind of just a side project of one of the ghouls that just did its own thing. Where, Rebirth is like, okay, we know the other world exists. We can interact with it. We can deal with it. So it's just, yeah. I personally, for my voting for the five things, I'd say Dark Descent is perfect for a horror game. The experience, the puzzles were cool. Like, of course, I got mixed around here and there, but it was perfect. And then once I got used to it, it was like a Five Nights at Freddy's thing where I kind of understood the assignment and got it done. And didn't get too scared to the monsters once I understood what they do. But it was it felt very scary for the longest time. Then I would kind of put I'd actually put the bunker next. I think I did not like the mechanics for the monster. Um, it did feel like it was cornering you. It would also kind of randomly stick around. It would random come out, and it would stick around for way too long unless you did something. Um, and then I would put Machine for Pigs. Very straightforward, but it was more of a walking sim. So while it was a cool atmosphere, it really didn't feel like I was playing a game. I was kind of just getting told a story that was interactive. Um, and then I would go with Rebirth. While it was cool, the lore was there. It just the gameplay and the monsters pissed me off, dude. It was just like the tank. The tank is the biggest example of I ran around to get this shell and get it all put together, and then I put it in this tank. The tank I didn't even know I could get into, and I shoot it, and it falls after my entire goal is to open this gate, and I can't even get into the gate. I just and then the ghouls, it was just a runaway thing. Um, it really didn't give you much hiding space. It's run from the enemy, run from the enemy, run from the enemy. Um, and I would say the biggest complaint is just it felt very bland. If like I was saying during my stream and the very end of the very last video, for Amnesia the Bunker, um, if you just gave me the story of her and Tazzy in Algeria and having little points of her popping in and out of the other world and just giving me a DLC where either Mandus or Daniel returns, so fan favorite comes back. The classics can come back, and having them forced into the factory and actually do something. I rather them have one of those two have been interactors with this. I guess the Empress couldn't have had any reason with the child, but it's kind of just like the child's kind of like, oh, this is what's happening. This is what's happening. It's like I would rather just have a lady trying to survive a plane, after a plane crash, everything go wrong, and because the substances left over from the other world is affecting her life and ruining her any people she cared about. And then having little glimpses into this other world after the fact, and then have people that I actually personally nothing against Tazzy, but I felt like I care more about the story of Daniel and Mandus. I'd rather them continue it or at least explain it better by having them interact with it before their amnesia, or before they started their story, like Mandus before he starts the Machine for Pigs. But anyways, and then of course Justine. Justine was so useless. you could have just gave me extra stuff in the Dark Descent or extra stuff in the Machine for Pigs to explain it. Because it was just kind of just a psychopath that is the daughter of someone that was contacted for the expedition for Algeria. That was it. It was a side story to a side story of the main thing, and it didn't even have anything to do with any of the actual story points. It's just, let's just give this girl psychological problems, and because her father was a well-known like psychologist or whatever, like someone who actually treated mental problems, let's give her the opposite and make her be the problem for mental problems, and kind of experiment with people. And the suitors were the most annoying. I loved the idea of just like her insanity, well, psychopathic nature, created those monsters, but it's like, hey, these guys can do nothing but hear, and I tried to distract and it wouldn't work. And then the biggest issue was just like, it was to the T. You are not able to do something, you lose. But anyways, yeah, it's just this is the end of Amnesia for now. Like I said, if you want to continue this, I think the bunker is the perfect idea for continuing. It's just like, yes, have the orb, the shadow, and Vitae come back, be the reason for it. It's very similar to Goosebumps, where like Monster Blood has returned in several stories and been the reason for several things existing in the Goosebumps stories. Um, but it doesn't have to explain where it is. You don't have to get into the nitty gritty of the other world. You just have to be, this stuff still exists and it's still affecting things. Because even if the factory gets shut down by Tazzy, in Rebirth, there's still going to be those points, those ripples between Earths, planets and worlds, that some of this stuff is still going to exist, and it's very similar to Lazarus Pits from DC. It's just like, it's still there. The liquid is still existing. It's going to stay there until either someone uses it up or, some bullcrap thing happens to it. So this stuff is still going to go around. It'll probably be marketed out around. So I think the bunker is perfect. I think Tazzy's story I don't want to continue that one. Mandus, I think like I said, a DLC where them interacting with the other world and getting stuck there would have been perfect. So yeah, it's like, I don't want anything to connect back to the old ones unless you're going to actually bring back the old characters of the originals. Or just do a new story that has effects from the things. I don't want to keep running from the shadow, though. I really did not. I did like the fact that I didn't have the flesh popping up at random. But anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. This is not a replacement for Nancy Drew not coming out yesterday. This is supposed to be tomorrow's video, but I wanted to make sure you had a video to make up. Nancy Drew will be coming out tomorrow to kind of do a flip-flop. And then I am working on this script for Secret of the Mimic Summary. I'm trying to kind of stick to just the game and have little bits for the other games. Because I'm not trying to do what I did here, where I mentioned a lot of the other stuff. And then next week, we'll be working on a bunch of theories, more like a storyline, because there's a lot of talk happening that's kind of being like, oh, that makes sense. So yeah, summary this week, theory next week. But I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.